Hey, friends, Mark Harrington here, coming to you a little late. I wanted to talk about this Project Veritas video that shows a whistleblower talking about undercover emails that were given to Project Veritas about these fetal cells and their use in aborted babies. So it's been like a day or two since that was released, so I'm a little late coming to you, but I do want to talk about this because few people are. So if you would go ahead and play the clip. This is Project Veritas with a whistleblower talking about emails regarding the fetal cell lines that were used to test for the Pfizer vaccine.
Work at a pharmaceutical company. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I just believe in research and science.
Well, in this database, you came across a chain of emails discussing fetal tissue and the COVID vaccine. Vanessa Gelman, who works in Washington, D.C., is Senior Director of Worldwide Research. The question came up as an inquiry to our MedInfo group. They're asking, quote, did Pfizer make use of a cell line from an aborted fetus?
They want you to leave out the highlighted part, which is the one or more cell lines.
There. So here's the thing: when all this was happening a year ago, and they were talking about the Operation Warp Speed vaccines that were coming online, we were finding out that all of them, at one way or another, had used fetal cell lines either to test for the vaccine or actually in the production. So this isn't news. It's just even back then, it was hardly even discussed. And even in the Christian community, I didn't hear much discussion about it. Pastors didn't even mention it from the pulpit. So a lot of people were just unaware of what happened, even though it was already out there that they were using fetal cell lines to develop these vaccines. Go ahead and continue on with the clip.
With an origin that can be traced back to human fetal tissue has been used in laboratory tests associated with the vaccine program.
And here we have
All
your
right,
badge.
so let's stop there. So it's just in the Pfizer vaccine, fetal cell lines were used to test for the virus, or for the vaccine. They were not used in production. Now, that matters a little bit, but the idea that there are aborted fetal cells in the vaccine is not accurate, but they were used to test for the vaccine. So they have, as their origins, without those fetal cell lines, we would not have the Pfizer vaccine. Go ahead.
Are an employee of Pfizer?
I work at the McPherson, Kansas plant. It's one of the biggest plants in the operation of Pfizer. We produce some of the most units.
This message from Vanessa Gilman.
From the perspective of corporate affairs, we want to avoid having the information on the fetal cell lines floating out there. We believe that the risk
of... So here's the cover-up, okay? Even though the information's been out in the public domain for a really long time about the origins of these vaccines using fetal cell lines in testing and production, Pfizer does not want that information to get out right now. And the reason for that is they are pushing hard for mandates. They don't want people to not take the vaccine. They don't want it out there in the media. They don't want anyone talking about it, including policymakers. So this is a cover-up. They're trying to keep this hush-hush so people will take the vaccine without thinking about the origins. Go ahead and continue on.
Communicating this right now outweighs any potential benefit that we could see, particularly with general members of the public who may take this information and use it in ways
we may. That's the cover-up. They want the general public to take the vaccine. They're trying to push these mandates, and they don't want the discussion over the origins of these vaccines and the fact that they use fetal cell lines to test for them. Continue on.
Not want it out there. We have not received any questions from policymakers or media on this issue in the last few weeks.
Okay, stop there too. Now, this is a problem. I don't know about you, but no policymakers or media are even questioning at this point where these vaccines came from. I think that was the case over a year ago, where pastors and were not talking from the pulpit about where these vaccines found their origin. I mean, it was never even discussed in most pulpits around America, including the church that I attended. Nothing was said about this. Now, people differ on whether they should take the vaccine, even if they had the fetal cell lines were involved. I get that. I think it's a matter for each Christian to decide. But for pastors not even to bring this up when they knew full well that this had its origins using fetal cell lines, I think, is awful. And they're not doing it even now. There's silence from the pulpit about the vaccines and its origins. And that's a problem, folks. I mean, if your pastor's not talking about these vaccines and the ramifications of them to culture, to free speech, to the Christian message, the origins of it, he's not doing his job. He's just not doing his job. So go ahead and continue on.
To avoid raising this if possible.
Wow. We believe that the risk of communicating this right now outweighs any potential benefit we could see. They ought to put that on American currency. Philip Dormitzer, Vice President, Chief Scientific Officer. These are not low-level people here. So you're showing us emails between the Vice President of Pfizer, the Senior Director of Worldwide Research, about how to couch it a certain way, because we would not want to tell the people that it can be traced back to human fetal tissue.
That's
Copying
exactly
Vanessa
right.
Gelman.
That's what they want to do. They want to cover this up. They don't want anyone to know the origins of the vaccines, that they were derived from fetal cell lines, whether in testing or production. They don't want people questioning this because they're trying to push these vaccines. They're trying to mandate them on people, and they don't want anything standing in the way. You know, here's the problem, folks. The scripture is clear that we should not do evil that good may result. I, as a Christian and a pro-life Christian, just cannot take this vaccine based on this alone, let alone that the vaccines are failing and they're not doing what they promised to do, let alone that there's been all these adverse effects regarding the vaccines and how they're affecting people adversely. All of the data that's out there. I mean, that's enough not to. But as a Christian, we should not be taking this vaccine. And another reason why they're trying to cover this up right now is because of the exemptions and the accommodations that people are trying to get based on their religious views. Pfizer, she goes on to say that they are not allowing or permitting religious exemptions. So this is another reason why they want to cover up the origins of the vaccine that was found in fetal cell lines, because if it was found using fetal cell lines, aborted babies, if you will, then a lot of Christians are just going to say, I'm going to opt out based on religious and moral grounds. And they don't want that being one of the reasons why they can get one of these exemptions. Go ahead and continue on.
We have an approved answer to this question, the question being about fetal tissue, which Vanessa can probably provide. HEK2932. What does that mean? HEK cells?
Human embryo kidney cells, and
Okay.
it was from experiment 293.
They've used
So here's the
cells from
thing,
aborted.
folks, just so you know, this aborted baby was killed, I believe, in the 1960s. And since then, it wasn't killed for research, but it has been used for that. And we have been cloning the cells ever since. So there was not an aborted baby that was actually killed to derive the cells for the vaccine. That is true. But these cells have been used over and over again through a cloning process in scientific experiments in the production of vaccines, including the Pfizer vaccine. So that's what they're talking about there. Go ahead and continue on.
Fetuses.
Yes,
And they
HEK
don't want the
cells.
public to know that.
Yes.
That's staggering for society because of what you said, religious exemptions.
And they're denying our religious exemptions at Pfizer.
This is serious
There you
stuff.
go. And
you're-
that's
you're
why,
dealing
right?
with.
They don't want this information out so they can deny religious exemptions, because people just won't know that these were derived from aborted fetal cells. Here's the bottom line, folks. When you think about taking this vaccine, you've got to think about where these came from. That's first and foremost. As Christians, we should not be taking this vaccine for that reason alone. Of course, there are other reasons not to take it. It's failing. It's not doing what they said originally it was going to do, and it has all kinds of adverse effects, including death. So those are things we got to be thinking about. There's other things to talk about, and we can get into this in future programs. I've actually done this on my show. The idea that this happened in the 1960s. People say, well, it's so long ago and far away. How does that implicate me? How am I complicit in this if it's been so many decades and we're cloning the aborted fetal cells? I kind of get that a little bit. Here's the issue to me. Does the use of aborted fetal cells in the vaccine used by Pfizer give legitimacy to the use of aborted fetal cells in the future? And the answer is yes. Of course it is. If they've used these fetal cell lines to derive to create the vaccine for COVID-19, they're going to use it again unless people stand up and say, I will not take the vaccine. To me, that's really the issue. So I wanted to come on today and talk about this video, Project Veritas, talking about the whistleblower and the disclosure here that they have been covering up the origins of the vaccine, in that they came from fetal cell lines. So if you're interested in following me on my social media, then I have my public figure page. You can go to Mark Harrington Show. Also, my website, markharringtonshow.com, has all past programs, including the one that we published last night with the whistleblower of COVID-19. This was our 4th installment. You can pick up that on my Facebook page and also on all my on all the popular podcasting platforms. So